such a wonderful snowy day. I mean, everything is covered this morning. Piles of snow. And I'm going to make a nice, comforting food, a memory food from my family. In fact, I have a daughter, Priscilla, who always calls me. She knows how to make this recipe. And she calls me now, when do I put the onions? When does the sherry go? Well, there you go. You've got just about the whole recipe. It's chicken, cacciatore. And yes, it only has a few ingredients. And sad to say, my daughter made it a couple weeks ago. She never called me. She got it. But I miss those calls. So today we are going to zero in on making chicken cacciatore. And it's very simple. You just need, I cut up some chicken breast I got at my local butcher. It's always nice to get your chicken at a butcher. This is, believe it or not, a half of a chicken breast. So what I did is I bought the one big large chicken breast, and I cut each one in half, so I've got 4 very large pieces. And you know what, if you want to save on money, just ask them not to trim it. They do charge you a little bit more for trimming. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to come over here with my chicken. I've got a nice hot skillet going, and I'm going to douse it with my, of course, olive oil. There we go. Because the secret in this recipe is in browning the chicken. There you go. You hear that? You stand back a little bit because it is wet. There we go. And you want to just leave it in there. Let it brown until you see the color of the bottom of the chicken changing. So we're going to let that do its work over there. We're going to come back here and tell you about the rest of the ingredients. Well, again, my huge onion. And this is part of what's left. I always like to use a red onion, and I always cut it this way before I peel it, because sometimes I don't need the whole, or I need part of it, another onion, like in this case I did. So I just wanted to show you that I always cut them in half at the roots, leaving the root on, and then I just pull back the skin, and then I just layer it and chop it up that way. So that's how I did this. And then I have a big can of my favorite crushed tomatoes. And then I've got the star of the show, which I think is the sherry, because that to me gives my chicken cacciatore just a little bit of twist. I don't put a whole lot of vegetables. As you can see, just onion. Yes. And why I like the sherry. Let me tell you about sherry, which I think is, other than it tastes good, a lot of you look at the sherry, in fact, here, the sherry looks very dark, as you can see. And in my ignorance, I thought, well, looks like brandy, you know. But what sherry is, it's made from white grapes, which I thought that was neat. I bet you didn't know that either. Well, now you do. It's made from white grapes, and what they do is after it's fermented, they put in 180 proof brandy, hence the color. Hence the 17.5% of alcohol. So sherry and port, I don't really use port so much for cooking, but port is good to drink, of course. I like to sometimes with my husband. But when they make the port, it's very similar to sherry, but they use red grapes, not the white, and they add brandy as well, but they don't add it until mid fermentation. Or as the sherry, they end it after it's fermented. Well, that's just a little for your information. I always kind of like to know the hows and whys of things, ingredients when I'm cooking, so I'm just sharing what I know, what I've learned. So now we've got our chicken browning. Yep, now look at how easy. I want you to see something that I think is so incredible. When I put the chicken in, it stuck. It couldn't move it. Now watch. Look at this. You know why it does that? Because it is browned perfectly and ready to turn over. Watch this one. There you go. No sticking. Look at this. There we go. Now this one, just a tad, but I would not have been able to move that at all if it wasn't ready. So we're gonna just let this, again, brown this side of it, and you can hear it still sizzling. That's exactly what we want to hear. So our chicken, after I turned it over, we cooked it about 4 minutes, turned it over, another 4 minutes, and look how nice and brown those are. You can still hear the hot oil sizzling, which is good because we want to welcome our next ingredient, which is a huge onion. These are my friends. And let me tell you, onions were made for our good. They're very good for you. If you've got a cold, make some onion juice and drink it. I dare you. And you'll get well. So now we're going to add our next superstar, and that is cherry. Do you hear that? We are going to just cover that and let that all marry together. And then we'll lower it, simmer it, oh, I don't know, half an hour, however long you have time for. No less than a half hour. I like to go about 45 minutes. Once I've added my onion and then my sherry. So we're going to simmer that. And I did use cream sherry. I don't know if I had told you that because there's like 3 different kinds or maybe more of sherry that I know of. And cream sherry is my favorite. Once in a while I would buy golden sherry by mistake. It's a little lighter. It's golden. It is not as dark as this. This is probably your sweeter, and of course they have the dry sherry too, but I really enjoy my cream sherry when I'm cooking chicken cacciatore. There we go. So I've had my onions and my chicken. As you can see here, it was simmering for 40 minutes with it covered. Remember, I put in about 3/4 cup of my sherry. And you just look at all that onion, how nice and soft it is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to up the heat. Chicken and the, oh, it just smells wonderful. We're going to up the heat because we're going to add our can of tomatoes, our 28-ounce can. And yes, I'm going to add another 3/4 cup of my cream sherry. It does take quite a bit of sherry to make my chicken cacciatore. There. Now we've got the heat up, and we're going to add our can of crushed tomatoes. That smells so wonderful. And we don't add any water. We're just adding the crushed tomatoes. Stirring that, you want that to be up on high for a little bit. Remember, we want just a high elevation of heat just to get the tomatoes nice and warm and bubbly. Get it all mixed around into the flavors. And of course, the reason why we have it up on the heat is because I have to add another 3/4 cup of my sherry. This is very tenderizing as well to your chicken. Chicken comes very, very tender. Has a very unique flavor. So now it's up to boil. Yes, we're gonna cover it again. And with the tomatoes in there, we're gonna just simmer it again for another 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's not critical, however much time you have, let it simmer for. And my onion, what I like to do with my leftover onion, I showed you earlier that I cut into another onion. I always have little pieces of foil from these. Put it face down, cut side down, and then just bring it up and make sure it's all wrapped securely there. And then just stick it in your refrigerator, and it really stays nice and fresh. You don't get an onion smell in your refrigerator, and it's good to go the next time you need an onion. We're also going to be cooking with our chicken dinner. I've got some whole wheat pasta. we as a family grew up making our own homemade egg noodles. And sometimes we didn't make them, so I would go out and buy a certain brand of noodles that were very close to homemade. So we enjoyed that. However, I'm making this for my neighbor, and you know, when you're diabetic, the whole wheat pasta is really the best way to go. It's good for your blood sugar levels. So we've got our pot of water here that we're going to get that going, because we want this all to be done in the next 10 to 15 minutes. All right, I'm going to turn off my 15 minutes. Actually, I went 20 minutes when I put the tomatoes in with the onions, and I also added the 3/4 cup more of sherry. I forgot to say I did add some pepper and about just a little less than a half a teaspoon of salt. I don't like salting it very much. Yes, I'm putting a little bit more sherry in there, as you can see. I turned it off, and I'm adding the rest of the sherry, which is just another 1/4 cup. So in this recipe, you have to figure on using at least, let's bring it over here and you can see it better. You want to put a total of 1 3/4 cup of sherry into my chicken cacciatore. There, look at that, how nice. We're going to plate that, and then you can see what it looks like. And I've got the pasta over here. I did cook my penne whole wheat pasta. I'm just going to lightly toss it with a little bit of my cacciatore sauce. And then I'm going to put some of the pasta on the dish. And you know what? You don't really need a whole lot of pasta. A half a cup is a serving size. And we will put on a piece of chicken. Look at that. Here's another little piece that fell off. We'll add that to our mix. And that smells wonderful. Yum. Now we have to go ahead and taste it and make sure that it tastes wonderful. Now you'll notice on my chicken cacciatore, oh, look at how tender that just fell right off. And when I make chicken cacciatore, and being Italian, pecorino romano goes on everything. But for one simple reason, I don't know why, but for this recipe, we do not put cheese on it. And I think it's because you just want to enjoy the full flavor of the sherry and all the marrying together of the onions and the tomato. Oops, because my hand was there. Yum. Oh, that's delicious. You know what happens? The aroma of the sherry goes up your nostrils. And the meat is so, so tender. Like I say, watch this. It just falls apart with the fork. And it's not too salty. For those of you on a low sodium diet, this is perfect because you get the nice flavor of the tomatoes with the chicken. And so if you'd like my recipe and enjoy some good, warm, tasty, flavorful mouthfuls, go to memorableFoodDishes.com. Enjoy.